complex narratives of being taken by alien beings into UFOs on beams of light.
The Air Force is trying to cover up with a picture of Venus and the moon.
From my own point of view, I'm going to be very disappointed if UFOs turn out to be nothing more than visitors from another planet, because I think there could be something much more interesting.
I'm not telling you that. The United States government is telling you that.
Welcome back, everyone, to Disclosure Team. It has been 3 weeks since my last interview, so it is so good to be back. Thank you to everyone in the live chat for being here right now. Before I bring on my guest, I would just like to say, as always, guys, please keep the chat respectful and yeah, it'll go smoothly. If you do have a question at all throughout the show, please leave it in capital letters, or super chat is open if you did feel that way inclined, but it's not expected. So my guest tonight was actually featured in a show last year on Netflix, Unsolved Mysteries, and it covers the 1994 Lake Michigan sightings, which was a very compelling case. So let's bring him right in. Let's not waste any more time. It's my honor to welcome Jack Bushong. Jack, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I guess I'd like to start off, Jack, by just asking you like a bit of a background on yourself, how you became a meteorologist and what your position involved exactly.
Oh, okay. I became a meteorologist with a degree from Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida. And I actually knew I wanted to be a meteorologist since I was a little kid. My parents divorced when I was young, and so I used to fly from Michigan to Florida twice a year, and I just had my nose out the window all the time, looking at the clouds, looking at the storms going by, and I just loved it. And of course, when I went to visit my dad in Michigan in the wintertime during Christmas, I would start looking at the weather reports to see if I was going to see any snow. I mean, I couldn't, living in Florida, you don't see any snow at all. So I wanted to see snow so bad. And sometimes I got all the snow I wanted, and sometimes I didn't get anything. So I started looking at the, back then it would be the newspaper that I'd read, the weather report of the news, just to see what the weather would be like in Michigan. And that's how I got interested in it. I learned all about how cold fronts worked and all that, and started reading up on it more and more, and really decided that's what I wanted to do. But I've always actually been, and this is where it comes in. I was the best guide working that night of the UFO event because I was very well interested in aircraft. I flew a lot when I was young, so I could name every aircraft in the sky, every airliner. If I wasn't going to be a meteorologist, I wanted to be a pilot. So one or the other, and of course, my favorite game on the computer now is Microsoft Flight Simulator, and has been since 1993.
Fantastic.
So in fact, I used to let me find something here. I used to. I'm sorry. Let me.
That's okay. No problem at all.
I'm so sorry about this.
No problem at all, Jack.
Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, let's see. In fact, with the radar, when I had to learn how to use the radar, when I first got to the weather office, um, I had to be proficient and trained on the radar rather quickly, so that I could be on shift by myself, be on work duty by myself. Most of the time back then, we were working by ourselves, and if there was any severe weather, we would have to call in people for overtime. So the guys I was working with, you know, they wanted me certified on radar rather quickly. And since I moved in the wintertime to Muskegon, I didn't really have anything to look at on radar. So I would actually start getting used to the radar by actually trying to spot aircraft. I knew we're about, oh, let me think, we're about 200 kilometers from Chicago O'Hare Airport, which is one of the busiest airports in the world. And I knew that by aiming the radar over that way, I could actually see aircraft, and I did. I was actually able to watch them, because of the curvature of the Earth. I wouldn't be able to see them until they were a good 15,000 feet off the above the ground, but I would see them going at moving at the right speed, about 200 knots, and then climbing through, and also I could actually see how they looked on radar. The weather radar that I was using had to, unlike like for instance an air traffic control radar, we had to have one that actually measured the amount of magnetic radiation coming back, because that's how you measure whether the rain was light, moderate, or heavy. And if it was hail, for instance, it would have a particular signature. And so I actually learned using one of the three scopes that we use, which one is to be able to see the power of returned EM radiation, and the other would be the look down feature of a normal radar, basically looking from above and looking down, and also looking to get a 3D kind of idea of a three-dimensional view. I was able to manipulate the radar by going up and down with it, by pointing it vertically, and getting a kind of like a slice of the thunderstorm to see, if I could find hail in the thunderstorm, or even a tornado or some kind of circulation. So using all three scopes, when I did see the objects in the sky, I knew it was more than just precipitation or something like that. It actually looked like an airliner.
Right.
So basically, so I was very interested in meteorology for all my life. I was interested in aircraft all my life, and I'm also been a professional photographer here and there, and so all three of those I've always been interested in all the above. So if it was anybody else that was on shift, I think they would have just told the police officers that they couldn't see such a thing, UFOs on radar, and they would have just hung up the phone.
Oh, wow.
And that would be it. But I think luckily for everybody, I was on shift that duty, and actually knew that, hey, if I can see airplanes, I might be able to see UFOs. So
Yeah,
I went ahead and gave it a try. Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about the night of March 8th of 1994.
Sure.
So what was the weather like that night? Was there anything being picked up by the radar prior to these objects? Any kind of weather phenomenon on the radar? Any artifacts? Anything? Or was it just a clear kind of blank screen?
It was a blank screen. It was clear and a cold night. It was several degrees below freezing, and so It's 20 degrees Fahrenheit would be, what is that, about minus 5 to 10 degrees Celsius. And so it was quite chilly. The winds were calm. One of the things that can affect the radar is a temperature inversion, where you get a layer of warm air above cold air. So we didn't have that night. We had just had a cold front come through the area. We were under a dome of high pressure, and so it was very absolutely crystal clear. We had a good 80 miles of visibility, and so that night the stars were absolutely crystal clear. I can remember that. It was a great night for stargazing and everything. So we were going to be able to see at far distances, that would be the perfect night. And that would explain why there were about 300 calls coming in about about these UFOs. So
absolutely
it was amazing. Yeah.
So I think I'm going to just pick out a couple of the witness sort of cases that really stood out to me, and I think the first one started at about 9 p.m. that evening, and that was Holly Graves, who saw lights outside the back of a house. And I've actually taken a couple of stills from the Netflix show just to get an idea for people watching this, just kind of things she was seeing. So I'm going to just share my screen now. I've got to reiterate, these are just recreations, everybody. These are not photographs of what she saw. It's I know what people are like in the comments. So, I mean, this is the kind of how close up she saw an object at first. And, these lights were absolutely blinding above her, the rear of her house.
Right.
And I believe she contacted 911 and spoke to somebody there. Can you sort of take us through what happened with her?
Yes, she was, I'm actually thinking she called in at about 9:30, actually, local time. And then I was called at 10 o'clock, right on the dot, 10 o'clock. So it was easy for me to, when I took the recording from the phone call, for me to actually tell exactly what time it was when I timed the, I tried to figure out the speed of the objects just based on, the minutes into the phone call, knowing that 10 o'clock, pretty much 10 o'clock on the dot was when I first got the phone call. At around 10:05 is when I first saw the very first object, and it was about 80 kilometers from me. And so that would put it down somewhere one county south of me and kind of in the middle of the county. And so from that point, I could actually see it moving. It was moving not very fast for an aircraft. I would say it was only moving at about less than 100 knots. So, and it was at about 6,000 feet above ground level. So it wasn't that high for an airliner. It wasn't fast enough for an airliner at all. So it was quite slow for any kind of aircraft for the size that I saw on the radar. Now the beam width, the radar beam is in a cone shape as it goes out. It starts off with a radar beam of about 8 feet from the radar dish, and then it goes out in a cone shape. And by 80 kilometers, the width of the beam would be about a half mile. So anything within a half mile at that point would have, there wouldn't have been enough, I wouldn't have had the resolution of the radar to see if there was any objects, more than one object within that beam. Now some people say that they said they saw like either one object at a time, or sometimes they saw what looked like three objects in formation. So
Yeah.
I really couldn't tell if it was one big object or three smaller ones. Now, um, the thing is later on, I did see, eventually I did see three objects separated by about 10 kilometers, and each, and in triangular shape. So, and they would jump, about in 10-kilometer jumps. So they, I would actually, I took the radar off automatic mode, and that's where it's going around and around. And I had the ability to use two cranks. I could take it off automatic, and then I could use a crank to go both up and down and side to side, or all the way around.
I
And
see.
so kind of like a fishing pole, kind of the way it cranks, just kind of like this.
Yeah.
And so I was actually keeping it down, since these objects were to the south of me and southwest. I would keep the radar aimed towards the south and southwest, and say wave it back and forth from, say, 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, somewhere in that region to the southwest, just going back and forth about 1 second at a time. And it would actually would say, if, kind of almost like clockwork, 1 second, going back and forth, 1 second, 2 second, 3 second. And I could actually see it jump within a second, just kaboom, 10 kilometers away. It would disappear there, and it would show up over here. Obviously was the same object, and because it would jump, and then it would jump again in the same direction. So, it wasn't like it was disappearing and then another one showed up. It was quite obvious it was the same one. It was just, it was jumping so fast I couldn't see it jumping. It wasn't like a streak of light, because I had to continually wave it back and forth, the radar beam, so it was. Now the funny part is that as I was watching it, and saw it using the horizontal, it was maintaining the 6,000 above ground level for a while, and then I lost it, and so I had to kind of do a sweeping motion side to side, but also crank the radar up a little bit, where I would go was, I would sweep it across, go up, sweep it across, go up, sweep it across. And finally, I did see it at about 12,000 feet above ground level. But something was strange. When I saw it, I started waving it up and down. And that's when I saw three of them. And they were actually down the length of the radar beam at different levels, and kind of formed a vertical triangle. So if you could imagine, instead of being a triangle like this, it was a vertical triangle like this. Now, the thing that was weird about it was, in order for it to show up on the beam like that, is it was directly in line with the radar, and then there were the three objects that were directly in line with the radar. So it was, looking down at it. Here's my radar, and here's my radar, and then boom, boom, boom in a row. They were directly in line with the radar, which would be too much of a coincidence for that to happen. It was as if the objects knew that I was looking at it with the radar, and it really was a head scratcher. I was wondering if they were manipulating, was doing some kind of electronic radar jamming or something like that, if it was, for instance, military. But when I saw examples of electronic jamming, it didn't look like that at all. These things were actually in place, and from the observations from the ground, people were saying that they were lined up in a vertically,
Yep.
one above the other, and then there was another one, and then another one. So people were saying that they were apart and coming back together again, apart, coming back together. And so, but it really, I just couldn't believe it when I saw it that way, and that's when I said, "Oh my God, what is this?" Because I knew seeing 3 aircraft that was about 20 kilometers away from each other, but lined up directly with the radar, 3 and 4 of them. That's impossible.
Yeah.
That was impossible. I know that the military knows when, I was obviously locked on with my radar, and I know the military knows when when a radar is looking at it. The thing is, though, I had to do a process of elimination over the last 30 years trying to figure out what it was. And the reason why I didn't think it was military anymore was that these objects were doing some pretty dangerous maneuvers for a test vehicle, for instance, over a highly populated area.
Yeah.
And so there was just I just couldn't see the military doing such a thing over a city, coming so close to the ground and really making a spectacle of itself. I mean, it really, it was like it was showing off with the lights and then making geometric formations. So I really kind of had to cross out the possibility of it being military just because of the way they acted, what they were doing. Chicago O'Hare Airport is a very busy airspace, so I couldn't see anybody allowing military aircraft to fly around the airspace like that at such high speeds. It would be extremely dangerous. So number one, I know they were solid objects because it pegged that EM radiation graph all the way to the top. I mean, it was returning a big echo. It was returning a lot of EM radiation back at me, and it pegged that thing all the way to the top as if I had the thing pointed at a building or something.
Oh wow.
And so it went off the chart. I mean, it pegged it to the top.
Okay.
Even when I looked at airliners, it didn't peg it to the top. I mean, it was just unbelievable, especially going at such a distance, and it would reflect so much of the radar energy back at me, and so I took out that was one of the seeing whether it was military aircraft or not. That was one that I had to really cross off. A lot of people thought that's what I saw, but I just have to cross off. There were too many things, and not only that, but the airport was still open then, and there was Federal Aviation air control, air traffic controller in the tower there at the airport, and I asked him if he saw anything, to the south of him, and told him that there were reports of lights and a lot of people were calling in. I saw it on radar. He said that he saw what looked like 3 aircraft in formation with his binoculars. He couldn't see very well, but he said at a great distance away. He thought it was 3 aircraft in formation, but he said he couldn't see anything on his radar. Now, an air traffic control radar, one sweep is the entire sky.
Yeah.
With me, my radar is just like a flashlight, or what you call it in Great Britain, a torch.
Yeah,
You call it
yeah,
a torch, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So it was, it's a round, and like a spotlight. It's just a round spotlight, and it would be like me trying to chase a fly around this dark room, and while it's flying around, and that's pretty much what I was doing.
I
Whereas with
see.
an air traffic control radar, they do one sweep, but they get the entire sky,
Yeah,
and they use what they call a transponder on the aircraft that tells the controller what altitude they're at. Um, but because I was using weather radar, and we have to know how tall thunderstorms are, uh, what what the ceiling is of these thunderstorms, and whether it has hail in it. Um, we have more of a concentrated, you know, beam of
sure.
radar energy going out. Um, so I think that's the reason why he couldn't see it on his radar, but I could. And that's another thing is it would be illegal for even military aircraft to be flying around U.S. airspace without the transponder working. For
Yeah, and
instance.
what about the speeds? Because you say that you initially saw them going about 100 knots, but didn't you actually catch them going at really high speeds?
Extraordinarily fast, high speeds. Yeah, that would be when they were jumping. They would jump, say around 10 to 15 kilometers within a little radar sweep, within about a second. And so
Wow.
if we're talking that fast, we're talking somewhere in the tens of thousands of miles an hour, to to just zip like that.
Yeah,
Just to go from, just to absolutely zip from one place and hover. I mean, it would go from a hover to extreme high speed to another hover and just stop. And not only that, but I actually saw one of them go up to about 55,000 feet and hover. And, you know, except for balloons, we don't have anything that can go that high and hover. A
of
helicopter
course.
can't hover that high, and so we and of course, obviously, it wasn't a balloon because of course balloons don't go that fast. But yeah, so it was definitely it had all the signatures of an aircraft. Uh, when looking at it, like that it was a solid object, but it just not only did the radar not only did it look like on radar that it was not a conventional aircraft, but people that were seeing it from the ground said it did not look like conventional aircraft. It looked like it was making some strange movements that aircraft would not be able to do.
Yeah,
And so, uh, yeah, so there was both. You get the radar verification, you get the ground-based verification, and when I issue a tornado warning, for instance, or did before I retired, that was criteria for saying there's definitely a tornado there. You have visual verification, you have radar verification.
of course.
So that was like proof to us that that's a tornado. So if that's proof to us that we see a tornado by having visual verification on the ground and radar verification, then what do you call it when you have visual verification of a UFO and you have radar verification of a UFO, and you're seeing the same thing?
Yeah.
Is that proof? I mean,
That's the kind of data that everybody's crying out for.
right, exactly. And yet they say there's no evidence for, of this. It just seems like there was a lot of evidence there. My conversation was recorded.
Yeah.
I explained where they were when in real time. It matched up with what the police officer was seeing. I don't know how. I just don't know how you could, say anything but, that they were some kind of aircraft with highly advanced technology to it.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
no other explanation. Who it is, I have no idea. But I just don't think that I just don't think we have that capability, and it would be bad for us, for anybody, to be traveling around, as
Of
I
course.
said, in that area.
Now, you mentioned there the police, and following on from the Holly Graves, when she called it in, Officer Velthouse actually visited her and got some binoculars out and witnessed two objects for himself, with one shooting off. And again, I'm just going to show a representation of what he saw, because again, it was pretty clear, two objects, and he did say that one of them did, shoot off to the side. And then he left, apparently, and Holly's husband witnessed the remaining object actually split into 5 and go off in all directions and disappear. And this is the representation. It literally separated. And, this is kind of corroborating what you'd seen, these things moving in kind of erratic ways. So I find that very interesting indeed. Oops.
Absolutely. And, now I can remember they were seeing red, green, and blue lights.
Sure.
And so I know that that the closer the object is, if the lights are on at the same time and they're not strobing, if they're close enough, you can actually differentiate the colors. But when when the further away it gets, the more likely those colors are going to blend together and just look like a white light. And so that's how I can kind of tell, and the reason why I know when I lived in Florida, I went to go see the tallest Christmas tree in the world. Okay, it was in National Enquirer in Lantana, Florida, and from the highway, and I was probably about 15 miles away, I saw the Christmas tree. I could start seeing it. And it had, to me, it looked like it had all white lights on it. And I'm like, well, what kind of crappy Christmas tree is this? They only put white lights up there. But see, as I got closer and closer to it, you could differentiate that there was multicolors there. But from a distance, it all only looked at like white lights. So that's how I know that you can, the closer the object is, when you mix red, green, and blue lights together, you get white, of course. But the closer you are to something, you can differentiate it. Otherwise, it bleeds together. And so that's why I knew I could kind of figure out how far away the object was, or estimate how far away the objects were when they could see, either they saw red, green, and blue lights, or they saw only white lights. And so to me, that told me how close, whether they were, I don't know what the distance would be, but it would tell me whether the objects were close to them or not. So, and so for instance, there was one person, her name is Cindy Pravda, and she was in Grand Haven, which is a good, let's say about 15 kilometers to the north of Holland, Michigan. And so she said the lights were all white lights. And so to me, that tells me that she was further away from it. And they were close to the horizon. To her, it looked like they were close, she said, but I think because she only could see white lights, it was actually further than she thought. Whereas down in Holland and South Haven, the people said they saw distinct colored, lights, and they didn't seem to strobe. They just seemed to. They actually, some of them said they kind of like how. Let's see, it's kind of like the lights kind of moved in a circular formation. They kind of just would, it would be like. They're not really moving, but they're kind of turning on and off, and looking like they're rotating around the craft. I did ask Holly Graves if she said it was a round craft, and I didn't know if she meant like a ball or if like a flying saucer. And
Sure.
she said it was more like a flying saucer with the lights going around. And she said they were pretty close to treetop level.
Yeah.
And I asked if she could, you know, if it was more than one, like that she see like a metallic craft underneath all those lights, and it wasn't like some ball of plasma or something with different colored lights. But she said no, she saw a metallic craft beneath all those lights. She told me specifically that it was close enough and it was light enough to where she could see a metallic craft around, well, basically like the photograph you have behind you there, where it says,
Wow.
"I want to believe." Yeah,
Yeah.
flying saucer. So that's kind of what she saw. So.
Yeah, that's an amazing, sighting for one of the witnesses. Now, there was another incident about midnight that night that happened with a young couple camping on the edge of Lake Michigan, and what they witnessed was even more incredible. If you could just talk us through that, that would be amazing. I've got a visual for that one as well.
Yeah. There was they were a younger couple that decided they wanted to, for whatever reason, wanted to camp when it was below freezing outside, and there was snow on the ground. But they were at the beach, and they were in low temperature gear, from what I've heard, and evidently there was somebody had come down. The way Lake Michigan is they have sand dunes on the lake shore, and so the people that live on the lake shore, they have to go down quite a few steps to get to the beach. So they're up on a large bank and rather a sandy cliff. And so they said that this person came down and asked them if they were okay, told them that there was a storm coming in, which I stopped the person telling me and said there was no storm that night. There was nothing even remotely that you could call a storm. So I'm not sure why that person would say that, but they said that he was kind of acting odd a little bit, an older man, and but when he was climbing back up the stairs, they said he sort of, instead of bobbing up and down as you go up and down the stairs, he kind of was gliding up the stairs, kind of just, head was not bobbing up and down as he was going up, just kind of smoothly going up the stairs like he wasn't even walking. So wow. that kind of freaked them out. So after, I think they were falling asleep when they heard some noises, and they could see the lights coming in through the tent that was very bright, lit up the entire inside of their tent. And I'm just retelling the story that I heard from her name is Virginia, and she's the one that from MUFON that to actually interview these people, and they said what they saw was these spacecraft like things, or aircraft hovering, but also what looked like a waterfall going upwards, a reverse waterfall going up into the ship. Yeah, just like that.
So that's the recreation from the show.
Recreation right there. So, and that's exactly pretty much what was described. It looked like that. Only now on radar, I saw dozens of them on radar. I saw, instead of the 3 and 4 that I watched over West Michigan over land, when it got over the middle of Lake Michigan, I could actually pick up and see about 2 dozen of them. And wow. And most of them were hovering and sitting still for quite a long time, just sitting there. And they were at all different levels, altitude. But there would be a couple that I could see actually kind of meandering around in between the other ones. That was very strange.
Wow.
So most of them were hovering, and then there were a couple that were moving from within the cloud, almost like a swarm of these UFOs. And so it wasn't. I had thought that Lake Michigan was frozen over all the way across the lake and down towards Chicago.
Right.
I was mistaken. Actually, it was frozen across Lake Michigan, which is about 80 miles across.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and it was an unusual, very cold winter that year. But and so we don't Lake Michigan doesn't freeze over that often. But down towards Chicago, there was an area where there was some open water. So about basically where that swarm was, it was open water. There was no ice on
Okay.
the lake there. Otherwise, it was it was a good foot or two of thick ice across Lake Michigan, and so in the area near Chicago, it was absolutely clear of ice, and so it would be a if they were if they were looking for water, that would be the place to go, because they did zoom due west out over Lake Michigan where it was ice, and then they moved down the stem of the middle of Lake Michigan until it got down to just north east of Chicago, and that was and that would be where the open water was, and because Chicago O'Hare Airport has runways that line up west east.
Okay.
That would be a lot of the planes would actually land from east to west and over Lake Michigan. So those jet airliners would have a good view of the UFOs, and evidently there were some pilots that did see some unusual lighted craft to the north of them. They did report it in, but of course, because we're talking FAA and the airlines, you're not going to get much information out of them. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, so, but it was just a few of the pilots did actually mention, that they did see some unusual activity to the north. So we had a meteorologist, we had several police officers, we had a newspaper reporter in Holland, Michigan, and then we had pilots that actually saw all this. We
That's
had
a lot of
lot of people. A lot of people did see this. That was absolutely amazing. What an amazing case.
yeah.
I did a talk yesterday I was invited to talk at the library here in town, and I mean, and so we set this up several months ago, and I honestly thought maybe about maybe 20 people at most would show up. There was 100 people there.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I was still amazed that many people were interested in this. That happened 30 years ago. So.
Yeah, but the UFO subject these days, just the stigma and all of that just seems to have really dropped off. And I mean, I guess that kind of leads into my next question, because I'm sure after this event, there was, what was the reaction from your colleagues and things like that? And, that goes on to sort of say, do you feel somewhat vindicated these days?
Oh, absolutely. I do feel vindicated. I was ridiculed by some of my colleagues. The folks that I worked with in Michigan, they were much older than me. They were Vietnam vets, and I think they weren't so bad, I think, because they had seen just about everything you can see. They were they were understanding. It was when I moved to my new office that when they found out what happened to me, that they were folks that were my age, and they just they really gave me a hard time about it. And so yeah, I was allowed to, back when I was living here in Michigan, I and working up here. I'm in Michigan right now, by the way.
Okay.
Back when I was here, living in Michigan and working here, uh, you know, they it was across the newspapers, and but the weather service would not let me talk to the press about it. I think they were
Okay.
trying to protect because I was young, and they were trying to protect my career,
Yeah.
I suppose. However, once I got to my new office, they did, uh, and I was somebody did call me from one of the unsolved shows called Unexplained, I guess it was. They uh, my boss down there allowed me to go ahead and talk, and ever since then, I've been allowed to talk
Right.
to the media. Now I'm retired, so it really doesn't matter. Now one of the stipulations when I went to talk while I was employed, before I retired, was that I couldn't speculate what I thought it was.
Okay.
Uh, Now I don't think it matters. I can. Uh, that's why I'm telling you, everybody, that I did kind of check off the list of what I thought the possibility of what it could be, and checked each one of them off, and pretty much, determined that those explainable ideas couldn't have been it. So it all, there's nothing else that I can think of that could it be. Now I might go ahead and start asking around some experts that know the radar really good. But then you have the fact that you have people that saw it from the ground.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you can I don't know how you can uh, look at both cases and say what you saw were different things when it was quite obvious we were seeing the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a lot of
Yeah.
documentation from multiple witness sightings. And
Yeah.
for anybody that is interested, I have dropped a link in the description of this video where you can go and download some of the documents and go through some of the witness statements and some of the phone call transcripts as well. So
Yeah.
it's worth checking it out because like Jack said, it's more than one data point. It is a whole array. And that's why it's so compelling, that this case that leaves you with this belief that it's genuinely something anomalous. So
Right. And I guess I'm going to be doing a lot more investigating on this. I don't want to be one of those guys that try to make money on this. I don't think
Sure.
I can, because I did this as a government employee,
yeah.
and so I don't think it's against the law for me to make money on something that I did as a government employee. So I'm going to write excuse me. I'm in the process of writing a scientific paper on this.
Oh, wonderful.
With basically get into the nitty gritty details of how the radar works, what it saw, how it saw it, how it moved, and then go through the list of what kind of the checklist of
Sure.
to basically check off different things that it could have been, but it wasn't. And so that's what I'm in the process of doing now. I'll get once I'll try to find a place where I can host it on the internet, so it's free for anybody to look at. And, so once I get this up online, I'll let you know where it is. So anybody
that would be
can see
absolutely.
that,
Yeah, that'd be amazing. I think that's a brilliant step forward, and it's great to hear that you are continuing to look into it, to try and get more answers, I suppose, or just try and conclude, what it could have been. So that's really good.
I mean, it really, when this came out with the Navy seeing this and actually reporting on it and actually coming forward about this, I do feel vindicated, but also to hear that the pilots were seeing similar things to what the people on the ground here were seeing, and also what the radar operators that were in the Navy on the ships were seeing, identical to the way I saw it on my radar.
Sure.
They were seeing very similar movements, similar signatures on the radar, and it really picked up my interest. I mean, to have that kind of verification is something I gotta work on, and
Yeah. No, that's
so I who know, I really wish I could know what this is. I really want to know. And I would love to take a ride in it too.
Yeah, as long as it's got some inertial reducing like system on it or something.
Yeah, I don't want to be a pancake after. Yeah, right.
Oh, well, listen, Jack, I really, really appreciate you joining me today. It's been a fantastic conversation. I look forward to seeing what you come up with. And then, maybe we can get you back on and discuss the paper at that time as well. That would be
absolutely,
really.
Right. I'll have some graphics to show you. I'll send you some graphics and
brilliant.
And so and the paper, so you can reference it. So I'd be happy to do this. So this seems like something fun to investigate while I'm retired. So I'm really looking forward to
wonderful
seeing what
to hear.
Come out. Thank you very much for having me.
No, my pleasure. To everyone in the live chat, thank you so much. If I missed your questions, I am really sorry. It's been really wonderful. Jack, if you just hang around for 2 minutes, just so we can just chat afterwards. But guys, thank you. I've really enjoyed being back after my short break. I've got a few more shows in the works for the next week or two, so please look out for them. Be sure to go and follow me on social media, and you'll get all the up-to-date information. But for now, everyone, enjoy your day, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Goodbye.